Hi everyone, in this video we're going to create an image viewer like what we've got in this mock-up here. We'll start the process off by analysing this mock-up, working out the structure for our HTML. We'll build that HTML, mark that HTML up. We'll add some presentation with CSS. We'll do that in Codepen. And we'll finish off the project by downloading our Codepen project, opening it up in a local author environment, Visual Code Studio, and we'll complete the build, adding our other HTML pages to make our image viewer a small little web app. Well, let's get into it. Let's start analysing the mock-up that we've got to work with. It's a very simple design, just a few kind of elements. Let me think about some of the HTML elements that we'll include. Obviously, we'll need a body. Well, there will be a body in our project. Inside that, we'll designate this area here as some kind of main element. We're going to include an element for our header here. We'll include an element for the actual image itself in each of the viewer pages. We've got some buttons here, so a navigation section, and then finally down the bottom here, a place for some kind of description or some text. So you can see the kind of nested structure of our HTML elements, starting with the body. We've got this kind of wrapper element and then a bunch of other elements stacked on top of each other there. Let's go ahead and build that, and I'll try and work pretty quickly. Let's grab a new Codepen. Okay, here we are in Codepen, and we'll start with HTML. And first thing I'm going to do is try and replicate that structure that we had there. Of course, in Codepen we don't need to include the body, so I'll start with that main element. And for this project, the main structural elements that I'm going to use will be div elements. And a div is kind of like an empty box that we can add classes to target. So I'll start by writing out my first div. And straight away I'm going to add a class. And maybe we'll call it main panel. Close that off, of course. Open it up. Now, there's a bit of a shortcut for writing out divs with classes in them in Codepen. What I can do is type a period and then the class name that I want, and then if I hit tab, it'll actually write out the div opening and closing tag for me, which kind of speeds things up. So I've got a section for the title, a div for the title. We need a div for the image viewer itself, the image holder. So I might call that image holder. And a div for the nav. We call it nav holder. And these class names are just names that I'm making up. They're not anything technical, just names that I think work with my structure. And finally, a description. Alright, so we've pretty much got our structure for our page worked out there. Let's add some content. Right up the top here in my title div, I'm going to put a h1 tag. Just some dummy copy in there. All right, excellent. In my image holder, I'm going to grab an image to put in there. And to go down to the Assets tab, I'm just going to put a placeholder in here. And we'll swap it out later. Yeah. We'll go with this image here. Oh, I wanted to say yellow. Doesn't give me anything better, really, does it? Let's go with this picture just to speed things up. And I'm going to copy the tag for the large image. And I'm going to paste that over here. All right, now the navs may be a little bit more complicated. Well, not really. I'm going to make the navigation buttons. There was 4 of them where you could click between images. I'm going to make them anchor tags. So links. And I'll add a pound in there. Excuse me, for some reason I neglected to add the href, and then I'm going to add a 1 for the first picture, and I'll close that off. So we'll scroll down here, and we can see that link right down the bottom. Now we had 4 of those. Copy and paste those in place. Oops, excellent, and they sit next to each other, which is helpful. And in the description, finally, the last thing, let's just add, oh well, I think I had a H, like a subheading. And then a description. Sorry for the slow typing. Okay, so there's our project marked up. Just give it a name. Save that project, make sure it's saved. So there's our markup. You can see up and down here. Made an error here. Oops. Oh God, excuse me. Here we go. Just tidying that up. And make sure I get the tags correct. Okay, here we are. So there's our div at the bottom with H2 and a paragraph in the bottom, and that's looking much better. Okay, all of our markup is in place. Let's go ahead and add some style to our image viewer so we can replicate our design. I'm going to add, right from the outset, I'm going to add or bring in a style sheet for a font. And I'm going to use some of the quick access fonts that we have here. I'm going to use the import CSS style sheet. I'm going to copy that line of code, pop that in my CSS. And then I'm going to style a body tag. I've got to go back to Montserrat and copy the font family code. I can paste that into the body, and you can see that my typography is set in Montserrat. Excellent. A little bit of a reset. I'll use the star selector to select all elements on the page, so I can just tidy out or tidy up the default margins, set them back to 0, and also the padding, set that back to 0, and I'm going to add box styling, box sizing, excuse me, of box border, a border box. Now this kind of resets the box model on the page, so that when we include increments, we can get a nice clean implementation of our widths and heights. All right, might add a bit more to the body section, style up that kind of the margins around the viewer itself. Add a background color. And the background color is going to be black. Excellent. And we'll just change the copy to white. Now we actually had a background image behind all of the content in the image viewer itself. So I'm going to quickly add a background image by using our assets. And go up to the patterns in our assets. Feel free to choose any of these. If I copy that, that will copy that as background image rule or declaration that I can add to my style rule. You can see that that background image is being implemented nice and easy. So we created the structure of our page using divs. Divs are very versatile kind of element, kind of a empty canvas for us to play with. I'm going to target all of the divs on the page, and we had quite a few, maybe 4 or 5 or 6. And I'm going to add a border around all of them. And this is something that I often do when I'm working on a project, is add a border around many elements so I can kind of see what's going on the page. Kind of just indicates to me where all the elements are on the page. And I'll also add in a little bit of margin, space all those divs out a little bit. And so now you can see kind of where all those divs are on the page, which is kind of helpful. Let's address the image itself, and I just want to give the image a width so that it conforms to our divs or our design. You can see that it's quite a large image. It's breaking right out of that box there. I'm going to add a width of 100%. So that'll fit inside that div, which is good, and it kind of gives us an aspect of responsiveness. So when we move our browser around, or if we're looking at this on different screen sizes, the images will always conform to the box that they're in. Okay, let's look at the main panel around here, around the whole image viewer, and we'll target that by targeting the class name of the main panel. To do that, we add a period and class name. All right, some padding. Just give it a bit more space around there, and a background color. To separate it from the body. And we're just going to use a kind of a grey colour. Something kind of random like that. Brilliant. We'll add in a width. And you can see we've lost that kind of responsive aspect. So instead of a width, I'm going to add a max width. Now, when the screen gets smaller than 60, it will kind of bend and conform, which is what I want. And then we'll kind of center it in the page using the margin hack. 20 pixels of margin at the top and bottom, and then auto on the left and right, so it centers itself. It's centered in the page, which is kind of good. We could add some typographic style rules, H1, H2, and paragraph, but I reckon that's looking okay. I mean, you might want to space out those subheadings and headings, but I'm just going to leave it at the moment just to speed things up. Start working on this navigation. I'm going to target the nav holder div and just space that out a little bit. So I'll full stop nav holder, which is targeting this section here. Selecting this section. And I'm basically just going to space that out a little bit, adding some padding to the top. And bottom. Spacing it out, that's looking good. And our nav was actually over on this side, so we can simply text align to the right. Ripper. Okay, now we'll style the elements inside that nav section, and they are anchor tags. So target, we'll select it, select the anchor tags. Let's strip out the default styling so the text decoration can go. Set that to none. That gets rid of the underline. We'll give them a color. Oh, let's start with the background color. And that was a yellow. And then the color itself will be black. And all we need to do now is pad that out. And it fits reasonably well into our nav holder. Looking good, and you can see that they're live links. One final thing to finish off the kind of main styling of our image viewer is to add a hover state. We'll quickly add a hover state. We'll just switch out the background color to white, I think. Excellent, so that's working. I'm going to go back to my divs up here and just remove that border by commenting out that declaration. Just keep it in there. Sometimes I find it useful for troubleshooting later on. And there we go, there's our finished image viewer, styled pretty similar to our mockup. Looking pretty good. And sort of responsive to a degree, like so. Now what we're going to do is we're going to download that work from Codepen. We're going to open up our HTML and CSS in Visual Code Studio, have a look at it, and create a little network of pages to link a series of images together. So we'll need to download this work, and what we'll do is export it. And we'll export a zip. Hang on, better save. We'll export a zip. It'll kind of package all that up, and then we'll hit the download button, and it should download. And we can see that our package is downloaded. We'll show it in the Finder. It's over here in the downloads. Let's hide Codepen, because we won't need that any longer. And I'm going to unzip that in the downloads. Now there is a bunch of stuff in here, and at this point all we're going to need is this folder called dist. So let's grab that. We'll grab that folder out of the downloads and pop it onto the desktop. Leave all the rest behind. I'm going to change the name of this folder to, I don't know, something. This is our image viewer website. Let's have a look what's in there. Inside, we've actually got an index a file called index.html and a file called style.css. So they're our two raw text documents that make up our website. And if I grab a browser window, just drag a new one in here, make it a little smaller. And if I drop in that index folder into our browser, you'll see that the browser reads the index file, applies the styles, and renders our page, which is excellent. And those two files are nicely kind of linked together. Now, Codepen's done a little bit of work for us. It's written in some of the essential page structure of our HTML document. So I think we should have a look at that in a sec. One thing that I do want to do is inside our viewer folder here, I want to add this extra folder of images. And you can see inside I've got a series of images that we're going to kind of include in our image viewer little app that we're making. Alright, so there's our folder structure inside our viewer root folder. Let's open up Visual Code Studio. And this is going to be by no means an extensive look at Visual Code Studio. I'm going to open up our folder. So I'm going to go File, Open. I'm going to navigate to the desktop where I have my index folder. And I'm not going to open up any files inside the folder. I'm going to open up the root folder itself. Just be careful that you get the folder, not other files inside it. And then once I've done that, I do trust the author because that's me. You can see over here in our Explorer, we've got a kind of a replica of that folder structure. So we've got our index file, our CSS file. We've got two different kinds of icons next to it. And inside there, we've got our images folders, image files, which are packaged in that images folder. Let's click on the index, and you can see there's our HTML. We'll click on the style, and you can see there's all the CSS that we wrote. You can see it's actually quite a good kind of reading experience in here. You can see opening and closing brackets, and you can see opening and closing tags like that, which is pretty good. Now, Codepen has added a fair bit of stuff that we don't need to include when we're writing in Codepen, just to make that Codepen authoring experience kind of more streamlined, I suppose. This is the HTML that we actually wrote in between these two comments, and probably don't need that. I might delete it. This is what we wrote, but Codepen also added in a doc type. It added in the HTML element itself. So when the browser reads this file, it can tell what version of HTML it is. It can tell that this is the HTML, and then it can read the head document, so any metadata that we want to include in our page, and it's chosen a kind of a raw text format to read in. We've got a title, so that when we render this on the page in a browser, the title will appear at the top of the browser. It's also, really importantly, linked in our style sheet, and you can see this is the way that we link HTML to our style sheets. We use the link element, and then we declare that it's a style sheet, and then we actually add in a URL, and you can see this is the URL to our style sheet, which is right next to our index.html inside that folder. Okay, here's our HTML that we've written, and we're not going to do a whole lot to this here, but we are going to change out this image for one of our own images. So I'm going to delete that URL, that source URL, and I'm going to add in one of our images, which is inside that images folder. So I'm going to write images. I'm going to start typing images. It sees that there is an images folder. If I click on that images folder, I can choose one of those images in here. So I'm actually adding in a URL. So it's looking inside the images folder, it's finding image 1. So excellent, I've made that update, and I'm going to go File, and I'm going to Save All. Alright, and if I just move that over a little bit, and did I have a... Here we go, this is my... this is a browser window, and I had my index file loaded into it. I've just reloaded it in there, and you can see that it's created, or it's rendered that update that I made. I added in the new image, and you can see that that image has been added into the project there, which is great. So we've made our first locally authored change to our HTML. Now what I want to do is create a series of HTML pages, 4 HTML pages, one for each of our images, and then I can link to each of those with our little buttons here. So let me go ahead and do that, and I'm going to do that inside of our folder here. So the first one I'm going to leave titled Index. Usually the first page that you navigate to on a website is named index.html, or that is the first file that a browser will read in a folder. I'm going to duplicate that like so, and the next version I'm going to create is going to be called image1. And I'm going to create one of those for each of our buttons. So just kind of replicating what you would normally have in a website, a series of pages kind of linked together. Not kind of, actually. Okay, so 4 HTML pages, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now let's go and alter all of them. Oh, actually, I shouldn't have done that. Sorry to do this to you, but I'm going to delete those. Start again. Actually, inside my first index file, I'm going to add those links before I create the files themselves. So it's going to be index.html. So when I click on this button, it's going to link to that first index.html. And then this one here is going to be image1.html, image2.html, and a bit counterintuitive that I've got it labeled 1, 2, 3, 4, but we'll work with that. Okay, so we've added in those links. So when I actually save all, oops, in Chrome, got to be in Visual Code. Oh, and I need to refresh this page, so let's refresh. And then when I click on that second one, it's trying to link to that image1.html, but I haven't created it just yet. So let me go back and redo what I did before. I'm going to duplicate this a couple of times. Sorry for the fiddling around here. Alright, so now we've got a series of pages that we can link to in our nav section. And they're all duplicates of the same thing, so that nav will be replicated across the pages. Now, you can see in our Explorer over here, the HTML pages have been added and I can look at those independently. The next thing for me to do is to just change these images. So this is going to be images, inside the images folder, number 2. And then I'll go to 2. I'll change, I know it's actually just image 2 here. And then 3, image 4. Oops, that one should be 3. That one should be 4, that's right. So in our index page, it's image 1, image 2 in image 1. Oh, that's a bit confusing. But let's reload, we'll save all. And we'll reload our page. And now we can see that we've got something going on there. It shouldn't be 04. Oh, maybe it should be. Oh, we can see that we've got different types of files in there, so that's thrown me off. Let's just check that. So in index, we've got image1.png, and then image2.jpg, and then in This one here, let's just check what that. Image 3 is a JPEG. Image 4 is a PNG. Let's save all those again. And if we refresh our page, you can see we're looking at image2.html. And now we've got it working. Now we can click between all of those different pages and check out the different images being displayed. And what we've achieved here essentially is the production or the build of a small little website. So a collection of HTML files that link together, that exist in a folder that could be placed online and accessed via our browser remotely.